Welcome to the Spiritual Geek Podcast, Wisdom for Modern Times, where we focus on living with intention to consciously create a life you love and celebrate. I'm your host, Sheila Franzen, and I'm so excited to share another episode with you. Today, Celia has joined me for a discussion about reawakening to your soul's purpose. Celia Barsby is a creative visionary and now your personal cosmic soul guide. She creates a safe space for women seeking inner joy and connection to their own wisdom. You can find your passion for living in creative flow with the universe and recalibrate your life so that it becomes vibrant and magical, full of self-discovery and purpose. Discover what lights you up and see what's possible for you. She has soul resources on your journey. Soul structures will be revealed to you in a powerful and fun, creative way through transformational tools, enabling you to reclaim your soul's purpose so you can flourish and grow. You can weave with Celia at her soul's garden party, step through the rickety gate of your creative heart space, and open your pathways into your soul's magical garden. Celia, welcome, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I love listening to that beautiful introduction. And I'm sitting here looking out at my garden today, and it was just beautiful. I was stepping through my new archway in my garden. So thank you for that lovely introduction.
Well, you're very welcome. Is there anything else that you would like to share as part of your introduction?
Well, Sheila, before we started, you led a beautiful meditation just between the two of us. And what came to me was what an honor it is to be able to do this work, for this podcast to be produced to support the listeners. And I just felt really humbled and very honored that I've been called to do this work. And so I just wanted to add that before we got started.
Yeah, thank you. It is a humbling experience when we simply acknowledge all the support we have around us and that we get to truly support others in this journey of returning to soul, right? Reawakening to your soul's purpose is something that is, I think, near and dear to your heart at every level, what you love to help people do. So as we dive into that topic, how did you come to this realization when we talk about the humbling aspect of doing one's work? Like, how did you get here? How has this worked for you?
How did I get here? Well, I have been in the world of education for a large part of my life. I always say that I started teaching when I was age 7, when I used to line my dolls and teddies up, I used to play school, so I've been a teacher for a number of years. But I did actually go into the formal world of education, not just in a playroom. And as a former teacher, I experienced burnout. I saw burnout all around me, and I realized that I wanted to find meaning. I wanted to find purpose for my own life, but also that I wanted that experience for others. It's about, for me, it's very much the sharing of the tools, sharing of my own experiences, so that I can support others. That really is core to my soul purpose, is shining that beacon, shining the light for others.
I really, this has been such a fun experience for me to connect with new people through this adventure of the podcast, as I was guided. I've shared this before on the podcast, just guided to start having conversations with people and not even really knowing where it was going to take me. And, I grew up wanting to be a teacher and, thought I would teach. And there was a point along my journey through academics and high school and college, I turned away from that. And I was like, I don't want to teach. I cannot teach children because I don't have the patience for it. And so I always used to I was always like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And ended up, through a career of math and computer science and, then this lifelong spiritual seeking journey of trying to understand how the world works. But I'm reminded when we talk about life purpose, and I finally found this card that I had created when going through some stuff a number of weeks ago that I had been searching for a long time, actually, several years, and I had not been able to find it. But it was this card I created in a life purpose class. It was one of T. Harv Ecker's workshops many years ago. And the purpose that I had defined at that point was assist people in um, remembering and illuminating their light. And I had drawn like a school, and like I had no idea what it meant at that time. I was working in corporate America. Um, but it was kind of this moment of insight I had of that's what I wanted to do. And, it's like 15, 20 years later now that I guess in my own way, the podcast is doing that. So it
Yeah,
just reminded
yeah.
me of that story that these moments we touch into our soul and our path and our purpose, it brings this, hope and alignment to the world.
Mm,
And
mm.
even though as a young kid, I wanted to teach, and then I like walked away from it. I was like, no, I'm never doing that. But now I'm kind of, full circle back in that role of teaching and wanting to do more classes and education in this very non-traditional sense of the way.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I think I mean, there's a couple of things that came to me as you were talking it. There's this that piece about there being a right time for everything to show up, that you found that card at the moment that you went, oh, and that's what I'm doing. And
Mhm.
I had a similar experience again. I was, having a little bit of a sort out in my studio. And I found just a piece of paper scribbled 2 or 3 years ago. I looked at it and I went, yeah, that's got to be 3 years ago now, 2020, which was, an interesting year for us all. And and I'd written down that I wanted to put more of my work out on YouTube, and absolutely nothing happened um, with that intention until about 2 months ago. And it was a real sense of, oh, okay, now the time is right. Now, this is what we're going to do. And you go, oh, okay then. um, but there was always that intention, that desire. And I think, I talk in the garden party in my program about setting our intention, and I call it creating our magic, because we put out to the universe, this is what I want to cause and create. And of course, when that is in alignment with what the universe has guided us to cause and create, then it can do nothing but come to be. And of course, we then try and put a 3D timeline on that, which doesn't work, I've learned. But when that moment is right, then things just fall into place. And it's so interesting, this journey, as we lean in and as we trust that alignment. We listen, because that's a huge part of this work, is just taking that time and doing things very differently. I've had quite a busy, intense week, with lots going on for my business, and it occurred to me yesterday, when I was feeling a bit stretched. Let's just there's
I
a
love that
slight
you use
understatement.
stretched and not stressed. It's such a beautiful reframe of the reframe
Yes,
of the word.
it's there was a time when I would have said I was overwhelmed. I can now reframe that and say, oh, actually, this is feeling really stretchy. My word for the year is expansion. And I felt, supported, as, I'm going, yes, okay, I'm expanding. This feels a little bit stretchy. And I now have the tools to, as I say, regain my elasticity, to just go, oh, okay. So what did I do in that moment of potential overwhelm? I just went out to my studio. I got some paint out. I worked in an art journal. I had a glass of water. I stopped, quote unquote, working. I stopped doing what I was doing. Now, a few years ago, that would never have occurred to me. It would have been, no, I need to push through and I need to get this done. You go, no, what I now need to do is just breathe and pause and reflect and see what is it that I'm actually finding stretchy. And then when I've regained my elasticity, then I can move on and I can go back to doing what I was doing. And it was it was almost like watching myself go through an experience that I know a number of years ago I would not have handled in the same way. Um, so that's exciting. It's exciting
Yeah,
when we
that's
see that how much we've changed, how much we've grown. Yeah, yeah.
well, in those moments when you actually take a moment to put the tools into action, right? Like
Mm,
you can bring yourself back to being 100% present in the moment. And
yeah,
even the observer that can say, I'm stretched and I need to get back to being okay with being stretched, right? Like it's the
yeah, yeah.
elasticity that you describe. It's like when we are sometimes uh, when we are trying to fully live in and express our soul's purpose at its deepest level, it is going to stretch us.
Mm, mm,
I mean, there's a calling that we feel if you are even curious about like what is your life purpose. I mean, I remember doing every life purpose exercise I could get my hands on for years because I was like, yeah, I want to make sure I'm honoring my soul's purpose, right? I want to know what
mm.
that is. I want to understand it um and I mean, there's an aspect of we're here on a journey that we're always growing, right? And I think
Yeah.
I mean, I was a little too attached to an outcome of the soul's
Oh,
purpose
yes.
probably versus the journey of the soul's purpose.
Yes. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
glancing at your book, The Garden Party, which you'll have to highlight that at some point. But at the beginning, you just have this beautiful, you were born to spread your wings, climb up high on the warm winds, born to see the world and touch the breeze, to follow where it's going, to fly just like an eagle. You were born to spread your wings. And there's no perfect right answer for your entire life, right? It's just about connecting in with soul and spreading your wings. I love that analogy when we talk about soul's purpose.
Yes, it's interesting because like you, I've experienced meditations where it's, where do you want to be? What do you want your life to look like in whatever time period you like to choose, a year. When I do this exercise, I always say to my clients, think about a year from now. Don't if you go 6 months, you're going to be in a different season. And that that I think feels not in alignment, because you're not going to feel the same in 6 months, because you're in a completely different season, whether you're in summer and then you'll be in winter, whether you're in winter and then you'll be in summer. So I always say, how do you want to feel in a year from now? Because when my experience of this exercise, when I tried to go, oh yes, how do I see my life in 1 year, 2 years? I always tried to imagine the house or the car or who I was with, and you go, no, it's not about those. Those are just the 3D aspects of our lives. Whereas I talk to people about, well, how do you want to feel? I
Mm,
now am living a life that is creative and in alignment, and I feel that sense of joy, which is what I called in 3 years ago when I wasn't feeling that. I wasn't in a job that gave me fulfillment. I wasn't in a job that filled me with joy. I had some good moments, don't get me wrong, but I knew there was something that I wanted to do, and I knew creativity was going to be at the center. Now, I am not an artist, so I knew that it wasn't going to be, I wasn't going to be painting and selling my work to a gallery, for example. I knew it wasn't that, but I couldn't visualize what my life was going to be like. And I realized I didn't need to, because what we are going to manifest is a feeling and an emotion, and that sense of the vibration that we're resonating at. That's what we call into being. And of course, then that looks like certain things for certain people. But it's an interesting one, because people go, well, I don't know what I want, because we do tend to think about the circumstances that we're living in.
Well, and I think that's an aspect of we live in a 3D world, right? That's full of physical things. And so we have physical needs that often outweigh our intention of our experience of life. But when our experience of life is in flow, the physical tends to just seem to fall in alignment behind that. And we often try to do that backwards. So I love that aspect of, there's so many different teachings. Like the word that's coming to my mind right now it's that home frequency, right? Like, what is your soul energy? What is your soul's frequency? Because when we're connected into that, then we're living in alignment with our soul's purpose in that moment. Or like you said, it's setting an intention and manifesting a year out in a particular season. That's really fun, because then you're actually playing with the cycles of energy that are on the planet, and recognizing that these cycles of energy in this 3D construct that we live in on the planet, they do have their own energy, right? Winter is very different from summer for everybody. Like, actually one who loves winter, and summer is not my favorite. I'm a little bit the opposite, because I thrive and I feel more alive in the cold and the cool more than the heat. And so, but it's different for each person, right? It's different. And it's different energy that we're connecting into with Earth. So
yes, and it's very much that Earth energy. I live in the UK. We don't get a lot of heat. I mean, we're supposed, this is supposed to be summer. But there's a sense, I'm a bit like you, that I'm going, actually, I can think more clearly when it's a bit cooler. And this winter was an interesting experience, because I realized that I was finding it very difficult to connect with Mother Earth, with that connection with the earth, because it was cold and it was wet, and I was going, well, I can't go out into the garden. And I thought, well, on one particular day I did. It was snowing, and I went out barefoot because I just need to be earthed rather than grounding. This was a word that I started using as I was coming out of that winter period, and recognizing I don't go barefoot naturally in the winter, whereas from about May I'm barefoot all the time. And so I went, okay, so next winter I need to find creative ways that I can be barefoot. How can I be barefoot and connect with that energy of Mother Earth? So I've made myself a felt grounding mat, an earthing mat, I call it. It's wet felted, it's landscape, and I can stand on this mat.
That's
And
great.
and I'm almost looking forward now to the winter when I can get to be on my mat and go, yes, I can stand on the colours of a beach, and I can imagine myself on the beach. I can stand on the colours of lavender fields and imagine myself in that field, because that's the power of creativity, that we can, our brain just goes, oh yeah, okay, I'm standing in a lavender field now, and you can close your eyes and you'll be able to smell it, and you go, that's an amazing power that our brain has.
Yes, the power of intention
Yes.
and imagination. It is,
Yeah.
it really is incredible, right? Like that's what consciousness is. And then you realize how much fun you can have playing with consciousness. And coming back to our topic of reawakening our soul's purpose, like what comes to mind for me as we're talking about this is this aspect of where we create what we think is in alignment with our soul's purpose versus listening to what our soul's purpose is. I think a lot of conversations about soul's purpose is trying to find, like I mentioned earlier, the one thing, right? What's the one? Like people are like, oh, I've wanted to open a bakery selling cupcakes all my life. And then when they do that, it's like, yes, this was it. This is what I needed to do. But I don't think that's the alignment that we're talking about, right? It's like, it's not this aspect of one thing, and it's learning to create and listen at the same time, right? Use our passion, our desire, and our listening for what we create in this journey of life.
I'm smiling. Picture me smiling. I'm smiling because I have in my Facebook group, my Monday morning practice is called Create and Listen, because that's what we get to do. That's how I start my week. I create and I listen. Sometimes I listen and then create. But it's always that combination of the two, and it is about, it's that whole human being, not human doing, which I absolutely love that phrase. And I have a little bee that sits on my creative altar, because I just need that constant reminder that I am being, that's the way that we receive information for our soul's purpose, is by being still, well, for me, it's stillness. I recognize that lots of people would say they get information if they are dancing or walking. But for me, I get to be still first. I then might go out into my garden and I'm active, and then I get all sorts of other information coming in. But there is that moment where you come and say, okay, I'm fully present. I am seeking that information. What do I need? What do I need to know? What do I need to see? What do I need to hear?
Mm.
And it's beautiful. And I love the synchronicities that come. I love the fun symbols that my guides show me. Yesterday, the theme was about cleaning windows. Okay, what do I need to know about cleaning windows? Many of the symbols I have and the analogies are obviously to do with the garden, because that's where my heart is. Of the weeding and the pruning and the redesigning, and emptying out all the old pots and discarding the plants that don't belong in your garden, and so it goes. I could go on. But it's fun. It's fun, and that to me is important. There's that element of playful curiosity that we bring to this work, because that's, I think we are here to enjoy life. So that's really important for me.
Well, I love that you mentioned your Mondays. You start your week with create and listen, because
Mm,
it's that's really beautiful, because in that, um, it is both, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it's the blending of both, and it's kind of the same thing with human being and human doing. It's like our gift of being a human is we have a body to do things, but how
Mm,
do
yeah.
we keep our presence of being in everything that we do?
Mm,
Is always how I've tried to look at it. Because for so long I tried to make doing wrong, and it's like, no, doing is actually my gift. Like I love being active, but how do you keep your soul's presence and one's presence in everything that you do, right? So that you can listen, and that you're creating with intention and doing with intention. So, um, I love
yeah, I think, yes, I think the doing is, when the doing is in alignment, there's not the negative energy around doing, because it doesn't feel like doing, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
in the word we or in the way that we often associate doing as a chore or as a have to.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, what's one of you've kind of mentioned you have your Monday morning, your Facebook group, but when we talk about reawakening to your soul's purpose, is there a particular activity or exercise or question that you have found to be a great one, just to remind people to ask themselves or to do to discover and remind themselves or awaken to their soul's purpose?
Um, yes, I think for me, it's, I mean, I talk in the garden party about my most transformational phrase is, your deepest wound holds your greatest medicine. And when we give ourselves permission to actually look at our life experiences, and especially the experiences which have been more challenging, um, to the point of, I talk about my own personal wound, which is of childhood bereavement. I lost my dad when I was 10. I experienced divorce after 23 years of marriage, and those wounds have enabled me to uncover the healing. It is the healing of those wounds through my own inner creative and energy work that actually helps me help other women find their medicine. So a question for anybody is, what are your life experiences? What has happened to you? What have you experienced that is part of your unique journey? And when we start to explore those sort of questions, then we start to unpack what we're here to cause and create. Because I didn't recognize for many years that the my experience of childhood bereavement was just something that happened to me. I didn't see how I could, um, receive healing around that. For many years, I didn't even realize I needed healing. What happens is, when we experience trauma, because that, I now understand that that was an experience of trauma. When we experience that trauma, it creates filters through which we then see the rest of our life. This is, I come back to the dirty windows. We see everything through a dirty window, and until we can recognize that there's a dirty window and we clean it off, and you go, oh my goodness, that's what the world is supposed to look like, then we can start to change our relationships, and change how we see the world. So that was one of the insights from my dirty window page. And as soon as you start to change the filters, then you're able to really dive deep, and uncover what you're here to cause and create.
Mm. Yeah, sometimes it's those without going through the dirty windows.
Mm,
We and I yeah, being willing to face those life experiences and to truly, inspect them and um
yeah,
observe
yeah,
them. And sometimes you have to refeel a lot of stuff, and that doesn't always feel great. But in that aspect of releasing the trauma that might be frozen or the memory or the filters, then it is like having a clearer window. It's those
mm,
moments of
yeah,
awakening that you're like, oh, I see it now. And it's like, well, how comes I couldn't see that before?
yeah,
I often
yeah,
describe it as, you look through life through the box, right? And
yeah,
if you've got blinders on and you can't see outside of that little bitty box, it's
yeah,
this, analogy of
yeah.
you can't see through the dirty window. But um
And
it
I
really
think,
does.
I mean, one of the
Uh,
things that I think is so um, uh, it's so magical about all of this work is that when I work with those shadow aspects of self, when I look at the challenging times of life, I do that with my clients in a very playful, creative way, so that if you are feeling stuck in the mud and everything's feeling gloomy, and you can't see clearly, then let's paint with mud. Let's make muddy colors, and let's transform those colors into something beautiful. And what happens is that shift in our brain doesn't know the difference. When we work creatively, we can create scenarios. For example, whenever I'm painting, I work in a journal, and I work right across the page. Now, as soon as we do that, we are connecting the left and the right side of the brain, so that we are crossing invisible barriers that we put up for ourselves. And because we've done it creatively, we go, oh yeah, oh, I've done that before. And so then when we experience that in life, then we have something to draw on, and our brain goes, oh yeah, I remember we've done this. It's okay. I can cross that barrier. I can connect my masculine and my feminine. And it's a beautiful, powerful tool.
wow, I love that. I love the playing with it's the disrupting the brain, right? It's giving
Yes.
it a
Yeah,
new it's creating a new neural pathway without
definitely.
even realizing you're doing it. Like, that's just brilliant. Like, writing across the entire left and right side of a journal. Like, I'm gonna have to do that now just to play with it because I never do that. That's awesome. Um,
Try it. It's very interesting. Um,
yeah,
and
I'm reminded. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and the first time you do it, you watch out for um, all of the inner critic going, you can't possibly do that. Turn your book on your side and on its side, and write, and as soon as we
Yeah.
do that, we disrupt those old stories, those limiting
Yeah.
beliefs. Um,
Yes. Yeah, like
yeah.
it's I've followed Tom Kenyon's work for years. He's a sound healer, but he channeled a fiction, or he wrote a fiction book, and he shares in the beginning that he instead of left justifying or doing full justification, he has the book printed where everything's right justified. And so your brain, it's just a slight interrupt to your brain because it's so used to everything being left or full, to have it be right justified. And it's like, it's those little things, and I'm sure that was a guidance he received of like just doing something different to interrupt how you receive the information. And
Mm,
I
mm,
love it's those fun little tricks that are, the playful curiosity. I had written that phrase down when you said that, because this journey of soul's purpose, the more, in this, even when I was given the intention for the podcast of creating a life you love and celebrate, it requires curiosity. And why not have curiosity be playful and fun
mm.
versus extremely serious and hard, right? And so, like,
Yeah,
we get to
because
choose that. We get to create that. And so that's really a beautiful way to bring in a lightness to this journey versus sometimes the journey of the soul, and a lot of teachings are, can be really heavy, right? Like doing your
oh
work
yes,
and
yeah, yeah,
figuring it out and dealing with your trauma
yes,
versus, well,
and
let's just get
and just
curious.
listen to the words, that
Right.
we use around that, and you go, I believe firmly that as we connect with our inner child has much to teach us, and you go, you know, just play with it rather than though, and that when I talk about when we the power of the written word and the frequency and the energy that those words carry as we are working with them, and when thinking about children, I mean, somewhere I read, the learning that goes on in those first 7 years as our brain is developing is like more than we do in the next 10 or something. I haven't got the scientific numbers. I must look it up. There's a task for me to do, but children learn through play,
Hmm.
and somewhere along the line we lose that, we forget, and it becomes hard work. So I bring that play back in.
Yes, well, and that makes life more fun. And
Absolutely, yes,
we forget that, right? Like
yeah,
life can be, we can be doing our work and working through all of the really hard things, and it's also important to still have fun, to keep a lightness about it.
yes,
And
yeah.
not bring the heaviness of all those that have come before us,
Mm,
um,
mm, mm.
in our
Because it
transformation.
is,
Doesn't
yeah,
require.
it is in the shadow times. It is those challenging experiences that we learn the most.
Mhm.
Because if I mean, I always use the example that if a child is learning something and you only ever give them that same thing to learn, then they're not going to grow and develop. So we always want the next challenging experience in order to grow, and then we go, oh my goodness, no, I just want to go back to to not learning and growing, and you go, no, you don't really.
Yeah, the saying of,
um,
if you're not learning, you're dying, right? So if you're not
yes,
growing, you're dying. And so
yeah,
I, my family often is like, "Do you ever stop learning, mom?" And I'm like, "No." Because because that's what's fun. Like it's alive for
yeah,
me to learn and listen to other people's perspectives and constantly in a I probably don't often bring the playfulness that I could. So this is a good reminder for myself of being more playful in my curiosity and questions and learning and reminding. My daughter wanted me to watch this series, and we haven't quite got through it yet. I'm going to have to finish it on Apple TV, where they did a documentary called Becoming You. And it's told through the eyes of over 100 children across the world, from Nepal to Japan, Borneo, and it offers, it looks at how kids think, how they learn to think, how they learn to
mm,
speak, and how they learn to move from birth to age 5. And
Yeah.
so it popped into my mind when you were talking about how much children learn from 0 to 7. It's amazing, right? Like kids will fall down hundreds, like they actually recorded it and kept track of how many times a kid falls when they learn to walk. And it was
Yes.
hundreds of times. I mean, it was a number that I can't remember now, but I was just remember being like, yeah. And then now we get frustrated when we can't, we try to learn a new meditation technique or a new way to live our lives as an adult, and we try it 3 times and we're like, yeah, that doesn't work for me. It's like, did you give it 100 times? Right? Like, did you really try, or did you just try and say you were done? Right. And I think
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
aspect of our soul's journey and our soul's purpose and alignment, what I'm hearing right now is to this aspect of not giving up, not being discouraged. And I think it's really easy in the chaos and craziness of our world today. I often, like there's 8 billion, almost 8 billion of us on the planet, right? It's easy to become frazzled and, affected by each other in not all the amazing ways, but sometimes all the non-amazing ways that we affect each
Mm.
other. Um,
Yeah.
but it does
Yeah.
take practice. It does take, and maybe practice isn't the right word, but it takes experiences, right? There's a bit of the, like you said, 3 years ago, I wouldn't have just gone to my garden and sat outside and
Mm.
recognized
Mm.
my stretchedness needing to become more elastic. I would have just been stressed and not handled it as well. And so
Yes.
it,
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
journey. It takes
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting and mantra, I call it a mantra because it was a mantra, a playful mantra that came yesterday as I was, working on my cleaning window page was, because something happened on the page and I went, oh, I don't think I know how to do that. And I went, well, just have a go. Let's have a go and see what happens. And there was that phrase became have a go. Just look what can happen. Just look what can happen when you have a go. And of course, when we're working a in a safe place of doodling on a piece of paper, then we silence the inner critic, or the inner critic isn't put on high alert because they go, oh well, she's just doodling, that's fine. But you have that breakthrough, and then you can go, yeah, just have a go. I am receiving on a personal level the, how many times did you try, because I've had some technical challenges over the last 48 hours with something I'm working on. And I was going, no, okay, I didn't do it 100 times. And it's I'm very much in the, well, if I can't do it 2 or 3 times, then all I don't know how to do it. And you go, yeah, okay. And I tested it out, and it didn't take me 100 goes.
Right, right. Um, well, yeah. So that playful curiosity of the child and our inner child, and inner child could, that's a whole in-depth conversation of how that shows up in our lives.
Yeah.
Um, so as we probably bring this conversation to a close, what would you like to share with people around um, what you offer? You have a beautiful book that you've written. I know you have a program that you're launching. How can people work with you and learn more about working with you?
Absolutely. Well, yes. The best way of working with me and finding out what I do is to come on over to the website, celiabarsby.com. Come into my garden, have a look around. I have my beautiful book, which is available either on an ebook or as a beautiful hard copy, well, softback copy, which is a journal as well. So there's lots of prompts. I come from a teaching background, so there's always going to be some questions to prompt your own exploration. And yes, the exciting news that my online program is about to be launched. It's going to come out on my birthday, which is in just a few days' time. And so by the time this podcast goes out, the online program will be up and running. And come and follow me on YouTube, which is my latest playground. And of course, I'm also on Facebook and all of those usual places. So I'm hoping that we've got some links that we can share.
Yes.
So it would be great to connect.
Well, thank you. That's beautiful. I love the garden party, right? I love being outside. So, and when we're in that garden, we are having a party with all of the beautiful elementals and light spirits that are supporting nature. And so, there's just such a beautiful light energy around uh, imagining a garden, right? It brings us
Yeah,
in a connection with Earth. So that's just perfect.
it's a
So,
fun place to be.
yeah, yeah. Well, thank you, Celia, for joining me today. It's been fun and inspirational and some good reminders for myself. But to talk about reawakening to your soul's purpose and just remembering the depth of this journey, having fun with it. So thank you. It's been really fun.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
You've just listened to the Spiritual Geek Podcast. Thank you for joining us. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to share a comment and a rating on your favorite podcast platform. If you were inspired, consider sharing with friends and family. Love and light to each of you, and may your day be filled with joy and wisdom as you consciously create your life.